Okay, moving on to the next segment of today's show, I wanted to talk about the Cleveland Browns, who are in action tonight on Thursday Night Football against the Cincinnati Bengals. And if you watch the Cleveland Browns on Sunday, similar to the Cowboys, who we spoke about last podcast, it looked all too familiar. Number one, the first thing I want to say is this. It's that the Browns, they have to figure things out now, and they have to do it quickly. Because if they lose to the Cincinnati Bengals tonight, they're in big, big trouble. As much as I loved Joe Burrow and the way he looked on Sunday against the Chargers, I think the Browns are better than the Chargers. They definitely have more talent, and there is no reason why the Browns should lose this Thursday Night Football game at home against the Cincinnati Bengals. And I totally understand that it's a divisional game. And once again, I totally understand that Joe Burrow played really well and showed a lot of promise in his NFL debut. He also has a little bit more weapons than the casual football fan would think that could make some big-time plays like A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon, all those guys. But the Browns host the Cincinnati Bengals here tonight. And one of the things I said about the Cleveland Browns in the offseason were two things. I'll give you guys two things. Number one, I said Baker Mayfield and really just the rest of the team is out of excuses because he has a better offensive line with the addition of Jedrick Wills and Jack Conklin at tackle. Their defense should be improved. It's also the second year with Baker playing with Odell. You know, he's played with Jarvis Landry before, played with Nick Chubb before. So I really thought that going into this season, there really wasn't going to be any excuses for this Cleveland Brown team. And the other main reason for that is the head coach. And if you're not familiar, the Cleveland Browns actually picked up a new head coach for the second year in a row, Kevin Stefanski. He is the former offensive coordinator of the Minnesota Vikings and did some really good work with Kirk Cousins there. And I said, look, this guy has never coached a game before. I totally understand that. But at the same time, I feel comfortable saying that he will be no worse than Freddie Kitchens because you guys remember, Cleveland lost their first game of the season last year to Tennessee and they got absolutely destroyed. The game really wasn't even close. And when you look at Cleveland and the way they played in week one, going into the game, I said, look, Kevin Stefanski, let's see how this guy is as a coach. And somehow, some way, Cleveland's first game of the season this year with Stefanski as their coach was somehow worse than Cleveland's first game of the season last year with Freddie Kitchens as their coach. And I totally understand. They were facing the Baltimore Ravens, who are a really, really good football team. They're one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the whole NFL. They have the reigning MVP. Not to mention the game was in Baltimore. So I'm not upset about the fact that the Cleveland Browns lost to the Baltimore Ravens. I'm upset that the Cleveland Browns got played and outcoached in every aspect of the game by the Baltimore Ravens. On the first drive of the season, when you're Baker Mayfield, after the season you had last year, I'm sorry, you just cannot throw an interception there. Odell Beckham looks off. He's now in trade rumors for the second year in a row. If you didn't see the report, Mike Francesa actually dropped it on Twitter yesterday that the Browns are now seeking to trade him. If you remember in the offseason, there were some rumors going around about Odell Beckham possibly being traded to the Minnesota Vikings. I wonder if that could be a team that comes to mind. But going back to the Browns and their week one game against the Ravens, you know, the only good thing you could say about the Browns is their uniform. I like their new uniforms. They're better than the old ones. But besides that, they really did look like the same old Browns. And here's another crazy stat for you. How about the fact that the Cleveland Browns have not won a week one game since 2004? That is very, very hard to do. And it's funny because there are many teams in football that I believe are just snake bitten. Teams that will never win anything. They rarely win anything. I think you could put the Chargers in that group. I think you could put the Jaguars in that group. Maybe you could even put the Jets in that group. But I really think Cleveland is in another category. It's kind of one of those things where you can't believe that their team is going to be good until you actually see it with your own eyes. And once again, I'm not shocked that the Browns lost. Baltimore has one of the best running games in the league, while Cleveland's run defense was not very good last year, and its defense was very, very shaky and thin. Their linebacker core was banged up. Their safety core was banged up. But they should have put up more of a fight. Baker Mayfield, once again, this dude threw a pick on the Browns' first series and finished 21 of 39 for 189 yards, which just flat out isn't going to get the job done against a very good Ravens team. Even on a few occasions, Baker Mayfield actually struggled to pull the trigger. There were guys open, and he just wasn't hitting them. The pressure, I think, really got to him. Per Pro Football Focus, he finished 2 of 10 for 25 yards when the Ravens brought the heat with 2 sacks. Has to be better, especially with the improved offensive line. His lack of production is bad. And you know who else is? Odell Beckham Jr. This guy caught 3 of 10 targets for 22 yards. After the season he had last year, that remains to be a big, big concern for this Cleveland Browns team. Now, I'm not going to completely bury these guys yet. If you guys know, I picked them to make the playoffs before the season started as one of my wildcard teams, so I'm not all of a sudden just going to, hop off the ship. It's too early. Baker Mayfield has been better as a pro out of a 2 tight end personnel group, but here's the problem. When the Browns got down 24-6 at halftime, it really did allow Baltimore to anticipate the pass. And I think Cleveland is at their best, especially with this improved offensive line when Nick Chubb is doing his thing running the ball. You have Kareem Hunt as well. I think that's going to be another key for Cleveland, not only tonight, but really for the rest of the season. They have to get a running game going because when defenses know what's coming from Baker Mayfield, that is a big, big problem for the Browns that, to be honest, I just don't know if their quarterback is good enough to, overcome them by himself. And I still think Baker Mayfield could be a productive player in this league. I am, with no doubt at all, I'm with no hesitation at all. I'm not, selling my stock on him just yet. But at the same time, if this continues, man, there's a very good chance that Baker Mayfield is not the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns next season. And if you're a Browns fan, you invested so much in this guy. And he's had his ups and his downs. And I think Brown fans want him to succeed. They want Baker to be the guy and the quarterback that Cleveland hasn't had in a long time. But really, since the start of last season, I just haven't really been able to see that guy. And on Thursday night, they host the Cincinnati Bengals. And the Bengals surrendered 155 yards to the Chargers last week. And when you look at how negative things have turned in Cleveland once that team starts losing, I don't think it's too early to call this a must-win game against one of the league's worst teams last year. Flat out tell me, what unit of the Cincinnati Bengals is better than the Cleveland Browns? I mean, maybe you could say quarterback, I guess, when you look at what Joe Burrow was able to do last week. But still, Baker Mayfield has way more experience. He should be able to outplay him. The game is at home in prime time, and I'm telling you, if the Cleveland Browns lose this game, I think there's a realistic chance that next year, man, once again, we could be looking at Baker Mayfield as the next Jameis Winston, a guy who's a former first overall pick, has shown flashes before, but really just hasn't been able to get over the hump and break through with all that potential. The other problem for Baker Mayfield here is this. In the game against the Ravens the other day, he just looked overwhelmed. He looked like a guy that really didn't know how to read defenses at all. And when it's your 3rd year in the league and your team is really relying on you to be one of the leaders and a guy that could really get the job done, I think that's a problem for Baker Mayfield. And watching this film against the Ravens, I'm a little worried, man. And I got to be honest, I'll get to the picks in a little bit, so I'll tell you what my prediction for Browns-Bengals are tonight. But I'll say this. The Cincinnati Bengals absolutely have a legitimate chance to win this game because I know the opponents were totally different. I know how good the Baltimore Ravens are, especially when you compare them to the Los Angeles Chargers. But at the same time, Cincinnati looked like the better football team on Sunday. And I know it's a whole new day, a whole new week. It was only week 1 last week. Maybe the rust gets off for Cleveland. But I got to be honest, if I'm a Browns fan, it's very concerning. And for me, the way my quarterback played on Sunday, that was a big, big problem. The other thing about Baker Mayfield is this, and this was a tweet from John Middlecoff, and I totally agree. And it said, Baker Mayfield runs around like he's a good athlete. He needs to play like Breeze if he's ever going to be good. Pass or throw away. These defensive linemen can catch up to him with their eyes closed. Brown staff needs to coach him up big time. And when I see that statement from John Middlecoff, I totally agree. Baker Mayfield's decision-making just hasn't been good over the last couple years. And when he was at Oklahoma, he was a guy that loved to throw the ball all around the field. But you guys know, when you play in the Big 12, It's a totally different league than playing in the NFL. We all know how the Big 12 is known for all of the crazy numbers that their quarterbacks put up, and just how fast and how quick they get rid of the ball and how they just air it out. And that's exactly what Baker Mayfield did in college, and I feel like that's kind of a reason why some people thought in 2017 when he was drafted, or 2018, excuse me, that maybe he can't be good enough to be the number one overall pick. And he looked good for one season, and to be honest, since then he just really hasn't looked good or like himself at all. And this is going to be a very good early season test for Kevin Stefanski and his staff because, once again, for a guy that's a first-year head coach in a season with no OTAs and no preseason games, we all know how big of an effect that could possibly have on coaches. We know also that the first-year coaches throughout the National Football League, really besides Ron Rivera, did not look good in their week one debuts at all. Joe Judge took an L. Matt Rule took an L, really based on his coaching. Stefanski took an L. There were plenty of other coaches that I think kind of looked a little lost in their first week one game with their new team. And I once again, I like the Kevin Stefanski hire, but I think he needs to prove tonight and show Cleveland why they made the right decision to bring him in instead of keeping and holding on to Freddie Kitchens. Even though I think we could all agree Freddie Kitchens had to go, but there's just way too much talent on this Cleveland Brown team, man. Especially when you look in the AFC. Right now, I don't think it's a crazy statement to say straight up the Cleveland Browns are the third most talented team in the AFC besides Baltimore and Kansas City. And I totally understand that we just saw Baltimore and Cleveland playing on the same field, and it didn't even look like they will be playing. It didn't even look like they were playing the same sport. Baltimore just flat out dominated them. And the good thing for Cleveland is you obviously go down a level of competition a little bit, probably one or two, going up against Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals tonight at home. But at the same time, it's a game you have to win. And if you don't win, if you're a Cleveland Brown fan, you're waking up tomorrow morning saying, This is over, man. We may have to blow it up. We can't beat the Bengals on Thursday Night Football at home. That's a big, big problem. So it's going to be interesting to see what Cleveland ends up doing tonight. I'm excited for the game. I'm excited to see how Joe Burrow and Baker Mayfield both do, along with Odell. And we'll be moving on to the next segment.